Try like.
Welcome back to another Fight Back interview. We couldn't host these interviews without some kick-ass sponsors. So let me tell you about a company called Prove. Prove is the modern way for businesses to enable their customers to prove their identities. Prove offers phone-centric solutions that enable its customers to acquire new consumers and engage with their existing consumers by removing friction, by bolstering security, and enhancing consumer privacy and consumer choice. Prove solutions are used by more than 1,000 businesses across diversified industries, including banks, financial services, healthcare, insurance, and e-commerce. We couldn't be more grateful to have Prove as a sponsor and enable us to bring these very human-centric conversations to you all today. Without further ado, let's get after it. All right, welcome back to another Fight Back interview. I am super excited, really excited to have Karen Boyer on today, a kind of long-time connection in the industry, a friend even, I would say, and somebody who's really good at educating and putting her voice out there for digital audiences like this, or on stage where you can find her every now and then. So, Karen, welcome, and can you just provide a brief intro of yourself for folks who are not familiar with you?
Sure. So Karen Boyer, I'm currently in charge of fraud prevention, detection, the strategy teams, and the operations teams that come with that at M&T Bank. In the past, I've worked for a couple different banks, but also in the industry, I'm very versed in, for example, BPI, ABA, IAFCI, chair a couple working groups and boards for each of those organizations, as well as, client advisory boards for some vendors. So nonetheless, I say that just to say that my views and opinions are based off of my experience in the industry, not necessarily of where I worked, where I have worked, where I'm working now, or where I will work. I don't know. But nonetheless, yes. So thank you, PJ. Appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah. And now you have me confused because I thought it was Boyer, but you said Boyer.
In case.
Just in case. She responds to both. If either way, she's not going to get mad at you. So however you want to pronounce the last name. So let's jump right into it. You started fraud fighting, well, at least your journey, and it's always interesting how and where people get their starts, but yours was at a regional bank in the Northeast called Websters Bank. And actually before this prepping, I was like, oh, let me learn more about Websters Bank, because I thought it was a smaller bank, but it's actually fairly sizable. But anyways, you were there for you were there for longer than 7.5 years, but for 7.5 years, you were a fraud analyst. And usually in those roles are a bit more entry level, you're kind of grinding it out. And I'm really interested in how that role prepared you for managerial and leadership roles down the line.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, first of all, PJ, thanks for actually knowing my timeline better than I did, thinking about it. I was like, wait, was it 7? I guess, but it's hard to add up the math and actually be realistic of how long I've been in banking because it's apparently older than my age. But nonetheless, for management, I would say it seems a little cliche, but I've just, and I did work for a smaller bank prior to Webster. Webster actually acquired it. So it was North American Bank, had 10 or so branches, just very local in Connecticut, and so then expanded. But so I've had many managers and leadership over that period of time, even as more of the entry level type of scenario, right? And so as much as I didn't realize it was preparing me as I was going through it, I definitely noticed what good leadership was and what was very upsetting, if you will. And so I would, I guess, kind of unconsciously kind of put those little things in my pocket and left side, right side. And as I got older and was able to have management opportunities, it was one of the things that I literally wrote down, because everybody has their first time being a manager, right? And typically management looks for past management experience, but then you can never get that experience if you don't first become a manager. So
Exactly.
anyways, long story long, but I remember kind of taking out a piece of paper and just taking what really affected me negatively and what affected me positively. And just seeing it there, I'm like, okay, well, this is a good start. I know at least what not to do and what worked for me, hoping that that would then translate to my staff. And then I also realized that I was a changer, if you will. So I changed not just operations, I changed not just things or processes, but I did change like people's thoughts, or I said thought processes, if you will, and or opinions, not necessarily to sway them in my direction or not, but I've been kind of referenced like, oh my God, like you're a people changer. And then I realized that that's a fancy kind of term of just leadership. And again, I don't mean to brag. I'm just collecting evidence of what has been presented to me from my
And
past.
it's not bragging. No, you influence people in a positive way, not to be an influencer and
Yeah,
make a big
yeah,
name for yourself, but there's personality traits, there's
right,
styles, there's ways you connect with people that obviously influence action, and that is managers, leaders. That's a big part of that, right?
right. And to kind of dig into that a little bit, I observed as I was part of, an analyst crew as well as in lower to mid-level management. But again, might seem like management 101, but people respond differently and you can't have one style to everybody. You have to understand what works for Johnny might not work for Lucy, and so catering, but it's not just catering, it's about empathy and kind of creating that connection per person in order to influence them, if you will, not just for positive results, but to help them grow as well. That's definitely something that I think doesn't necessarily get taught as much, especially to entry level management. I have had leadership classes that, it's kind of like, oh yeah, of course, yeah. But I think that gets missed the mark on the entry level management is connecting. And there's a difference between a manager and a leader, and leaders, you know, make the change, make the difference.
Yeah, and some of it's hard to teach, but some of it you can teach. Some of
Right.
these soft skills are kind of, like I said, they're part of how you show up, your personality, how you communicate. But certain communication styles, emotional intelligence, like those things can be, it's a muscle that can be strengthened, even if it's not your natural, you know, go
Right.
to. I think of it a lot like a coach in athletics. Like their job is to enable everybody around them, and every position player. I look at like football, the wide receiver has a different personality than the running back, than the quarter, and each of those are a little bit different. And that's hard.
Yeah.
That's why managing people and leading is, and I have a question later in it about, we're all aspiring to be, these acronyms of VP and SVP and EVP and whatever it is, but careful what you wish for, in that it's just that there's the responsibility, the challenge. I think I even saw something on LinkedIn, on the feed where it's like less people want to become people managers, because it's not easy, when you're a good one, at least.
Right.
If you're a really bad one, then I guess maybe it's a little easier.
I do really enjoy your analogy of the coaching because historically, like in a past life, one of my analysts called me coach. And because I don't like the term boss. I don't know. For some reason, I don't know. It just kind of like, it's like, I'm not a boss, like, because I'm not bossy, but like coach kind of fit because I can't do anything without a good team. The team can't necessarily needs a good coach in order to execute because then everybody's kind of going around in their own personalities, and then every wide receiver wants the ball, every running back wants the ball, like, so I actually really enjoy that reference because I've used it before just in my professional life. But I think that truly explains it. When I say that, like, I can't do anything without a good team.
Yeah, and the best managers and coaches take put their ego in the back seat and kind of celebrate and put the spotlight on the team, in a way that is very genuine and authentic, not just like contrived because they're supposed to do that. All right, next question here is, so I I was loving this when I was writing it down last night. It may have been a bit more gradual, but from my vantage point, at least, it seemed, like you kind of burst into the external speaking world. Like I'm sure, again, it was probably more gradual. But to me, all of a sudden, I was doing about fraud. I was trying to connect with more people. I saw this charismatic, bright, kind of down to earth fraud leader speaking in webinars, on stages, and really just letting her voice be heard in an authentic manner, which I thought was awesome. Is that how it happened? Is that how you remember it? Like, how did that play out for you? And what, kind of as a second question, what made you go from kind of inspiring and influencing internally to doing that external?
Like I felt like I personally also felt it was pretty, I guess was I don't want to say um I guess just quickly, like it wasn't as gradual as you might think as well. It all started with a payments link, and I was invited to speak on a payments panel. And I've done things here and there, and I think it was on synthetic identities or it was authentication, something. But nonetheless, I kind of looked at it and I was just like, "Is this a scam? Like me? Like how they find me at? You know? Yeah." And so I, at first, and I was not a public speaker. I never thought I would be. I never, like that was never my dream. And honestly, like, it was very nervous. So then I first was just like, oh, no, thank you. Just type in. And then I think her name was Jillian. I should probably reach out, but because I owe her a lot, right? But then she followed up again. She's like, no, I think we really want to have you on this panel, and then gave me the, panelists and everything else. And then I was just like, I felt like very nervous. So my natural reaction is like, thanks so much. I'm busy that day, And then I told my sister, and then she's like, just say yes. Like, what's the worst that could happen? I'm like, I don't know. Like, everything could happen, right? Like, don't ever ask me what the worst that could happen. I can tell you, right? But I said, if she asks me again, I'll say yes. And so she did. She asked me again. I said, okay, yes. And from there, I kind of made this like, and it went well. I was nervous, not as, calm as I am now after experience, but nonetheless, I kind of told myself like, wow, maybe, and I'm sure like PJ, we probably read the same books, and everything. There's like this yes movement, like, just say yes every now and then, see what it takes you, right? So I started that. Well, let me just say yes and see where it takes me. And so then it just kind of snowballed with the offers, if you will. But like, oh, exactly what you said. Like, hey, that was very entertaining. Heard you speak here. Would you like to speak here? Would you like to speak here? And at first it's just like, okay, Karen, I got to pick and choose. Like, I have a full-time job, but nonetheless, it was actually kind of like refreshing because people were listening. I don't know how else to say it, but
Yeah,
and caring for my opinion, and yes, like at work, obviously that occurs, but like it feels kind of like, oh my God, I found my people, and we're all thinking the same thing, and we're all
yeah.
having conversations. So it did happen pretty quickly, and I'm very grateful for it. But and I am who I am. Like I can't, as you could tell, like, I don't want to say that I don't have a filter, but like if you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you my thoughts, right?
You're from the
And
Northeast. I get it.
it got to
You
move,
know?
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Nope,
yeah.
exactly. No time to fluff things up.
I love that, and I love anybody who's younger. I'm 42, so it's all relative. Anybody who is in the earlier stages or kind of thinking about, I want to speak more, you're probably having the exact same thoughts. Everybody does. But whether you're my age, Karen's age, older, you've spoken hundreds of times, that's the process. Most 99% of people don't go up there and be like, yep, I'm a speaker. This is my thing. This is, especially in fraud, because you're doing operations tasks, you're doing analytics, you're doing back office stuff, right? You're
Mhm.
not being groomed to be a corporate sales executive who's presenting to the whatever. So you find your way into your comfort zone, but you do got to say yes, and you have to sometimes be given the opportunity. So good on, payments. We want to give as many opportunities as we can with About Fraud, with webinars and Fraud Fight Club to get, not always senior level speakers. And then sometimes you just need a nudge, or could be a cousin, a friend, a family member, because and then that confidence builds, that comfort level grows, and it becomes almost like, oh, well, that's not so bad. It's the whole story resonates, and I think is really useful for people to hear. Now, this came up in our session of Fraud Fight Club, but not everyone was there, so I think it's worth rehashing. And I struggle with this because you're pretty upbeat and personable. You can be a little feisty and spunky too, which is awesome. But like, I'm also I kind of talk, and I'm personable and kind of bringing the energy to the room usually. But like, some days are exhausting. You talked recently about how you had a water issue in your house, right? You have bad days with kids, you have bad days with spouses, you have bad days with strangers outside of your house. I guess my question to you is, when those things happen, you can't bring the energy, or you're struggling to kind of bring that. How do you handle that? Because everyone's expecting the energetic Karen, the normal Karen, and if you're even a slight tick off, they're like, "Is everything okay? Is everything there? Everything there?" So how do you handle that? Because I would love to learn how to.
Oh, well, I don't know if I'm going to teach you anything, PJ, because I definitely haven't mastered it yet. But you hit it at the end, and I think, and we talked about this too, where it's not only that like I'm in my own funk because of something else, but then when people could feel like that my perkiness isn't there, and they could feel my funk, then it goes to like, are you okay? Are you okay? And then that goes twofold. One is, oh my God, like now I have to kind of like I'm affecting other people. Like, so it's like, oh, now I'm dragging other people down with me because they're expecting me to be the one that's up, and so I could talk myself into this, spiral, if you will. But so I'm very well aware of that. So I've been looking for solutions in general, but okay, now it's going to sound a little kind of like out there, so be it. It is who I am. But I've been reading a lot about positive psychology, and it sounds like silly and what everybody says. Oh, write down things you're grateful for, and gratitude practice and everything else.
No,
Which, yes, of course, like spiritually that works, but there's also like scientific psychology around it that I've been kind of digging into, as well as like, yeah, I'll sound like a geek, but like the neuroscience part of it, of like gray matter and white brain matter and everything else. Yeah, this is what I literally do in my spare time. So yeah, welcome.
we could have a whole nother conversation about this,
I love
but
it.
we'll keep it high level. And I don't want to cut you off there. I just,
Oh,
so much of that resonates with me. So actually, keep going. I think you had another
okay.
point to make.
And then I've also been really starting journaling. And I think that it's therapeutic in a couple ways. One, and I'm not mastering it because you see over here, I have like 5 different books that I just carry around with me everywhere because I'm going to read them, but like I started journaling of just getting the thoughts down on paper because I felt like a little bit of a relief to like physically take a thought and put it somewhere instead of just having it constantly in my head. But then I also realized therapeutically that I would look back like in a month or so, and like I would literally like cross off every problem that I was like spiraling about, and like write what happened on it so that I can physically also see that everything I worried about ended up kind of being nothing. And that's where I am now. Then this I just kind of started this within the past couple months. And so that's my path of just trying to teach myself, like, keep being as happy as it could be, because the things that are dragging me down end up being like meaningless within a week or two. So if
Yeah,
it helps anybody, like, I'm
I,
grateful.
I I mean, it all boils back up to mental health and well-being, right? Like, whether you're upbeat, positive person, and then it's like, oh man, I'm having a down day, and now I'm affecting other people, spiraling, all that stuff. The mental weight feels like 4 billion pounds. Or you're maybe get into depressive states or whatever it is, and that can spiral certain directions. So it's it's how you take care of that. Like, no, there's no silver bullet on how you do it, and it's different for everybody. On like, I resonate a lot with like the neuroscience and actually, mindfulness practices that have been proven through science. They're not just fluffy spiritual things.
Yeah.
But other people might have different tactics, journaling and all kinds of things that, and I think especially as you move along in your career, if you manage teams, you take on more responsibility, you take on more stress, finding ways to manage that and show up the best version you can. And so I think all that resonates, even if you're not, you know, specifically this upbeat person who's having an off day. I just think it's interesting because most people, when they see somebody who's more extroverted and more this and more that, they think, oh, things are cruising, man. They're just feeling good. They're always on. And we do this with, celebrities or athletes or anybody in a public spotlight. We put them on this, everything must be cruising along nicely, but it boils down to, we're all humans and we have human things that are frickin' tricky. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that conversation. So, speaking of kind of personality traits and how you are, you come off as an authentic person, and I think it's great. It's something I try to lean more into. The more I realize these thoughts of, oh, I'm not perfect with this, I'm not perfect with that, try and be like this person that I'm not, the worse everything goes for me. So I'm just like, this is me. I have anxiety. I wear hats. I sometimes talk too much and drag out sentences, and that's just me, right? So but you come across real, and I think whether people agree or disagree with whatever point you're making, I think that really helps them connect with you. So I guess my question is that something you've worked on through your career and your life, or is that more of a natural inclination that you have?
That is, I'm blessed. I'll say it's a blessing. I guess maybe I should ask other people, but for me, it was something that came naturally to me. I've been aware of like a few values in my life of and things when things are off balance and like what would trigger me to possibly spiral or have bad thoughts. And unauthenticity, I'm glad I said that right, is one of the things that I could see from far away. And so I've always personally have a personal goal to be the same person as much as I can.
As
And
much as you can, yeah,
as much
because no one can be perfect with it.
right. But like it also back to kind of in addition to that last conversation we just had, it also does also affect exactly how I can't fake it till I make it because I am just baseline authentic. So I there are times where I just smile and nod and like, yeah, things are great. But because I'm authentic, that is what kind of lets people kind of see like, wait, something's off with you. But anyways, especially like in for careers, that's one of the things like in there was like a women in leadership panel a couple of years ago, I think it was Dados, and there was a younger generation crime fighter, and her question was like, and I'm not going to quote it properly, but it was basically like, how do you handle being who you are with your team versus being who you are with leadership versus being who you are with your family. And my first reaction was like, just be the same person. And then at first I overthought like, oof, was that too harsh to like kind of say like right out there? Then we started having that conversation where if you're in a job or career where you feel you have to change who you are depending who you talk to, that's probably not the right spot for you. Again, maybe easier said than done because like knock on something, like I'm in a good spot right now and it's like it's worked. But like even she might kill me, but even like my sister, I could hear her voice changes like depending who she's talking to. Like we could be on the phone together and we're like da 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 da. Then she's like, "Oh, so and so is calling." She presses it in and her voice changes, and I hate it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Why would you just change? Like, like just but anyways, it's a silly example, but that's real. Like people that's a normal reaction for people. So I'm not saying
Oh,
that's
no, it's
wrong, right? But
very
but
normal.
very freeing. And I guess again, like I'm blessed that and thank you for noticing that like I feel like my authenticity is what is helping kind of craft my path. So
I think first thing, it's very normal. So like if you're out there and you're like, because you can run into this then mental loop of like, I'm not authentic. Why am I not authentic? I need to do this, that. And it's normal, especially when you're in a comfort level with friends and family. And then you get into coworkers, but they're at your level and they start feeling like friends and family. And
yep,
then you got to present to your boss's boss. Of course, you're going to feel a little different in some ways. You do have to know your audience and make
oh yeah,
sure you're speaking. That's just good business practices. You can
right,
do that without changing your personality, right? So I think it's a. If I had to give advice, find where you are in that journey of authenticity. I don't believe anybody will ever get to completely authentic. Like if we're
yeah,
airing every single thing of who we are, and there's time and place for certain things, but if kind of the core essence of who you are, the kind of person you want to show up as, if that's coming through, and maybe sometimes nicer, more eloquent words with some crowds, and I say shit and ass and all these things that with other crowds, and actually since it's my own company I get to do it more. It's finding that, because I think it's more who you're, kind of the deeper parts of you, and how they're expressing themselves, less the exact words, or you're writing up an executive summary for, you're not going to write it in your way you would chat with your friends. So,
right,
but I think the key is finding where those uncomfortable points are and saying, hey, it's okay to let go a little bit and be me, and speak up in a meeting and be me, and believe in whatever, stand behind whatever point you're making or whatever you're standing up for. You're on a panel making a point. It's good to have a little disagreement sometimes, and push outside of probably those societal norms where we feel like if we're in front of people we got to act a certain way,
right.
and if we're in front of a big boss we got to act a certain way. And it's just continuing to push those boundaries, while not driving yourself crazy, because it's
Yeah, and that's a
yeah.
great point, PJ. You said it much better than I did
So I,
because, because I will rephrase. Like I do not talk to senior leadership the same way I talk to my husband or my child or my family. Um, but I think you said being the core essence of who you are. That's what I mean. Is like don't be a completely different person. Like
yes.
like you be you, but yeah, you do have to cater language to different audience. But and I'm just repeating myself. But to change your and shift your whole personality to cater whoever you're talking to. That's kind of like what I'm referencing of
Yeah.
of that, that thin line.
No, I think that was clear. And I think sometimes I think of when I give advice, or we give advice, I think of people who struggle to be their authentic selves, and they're kind of
Yeah.
clinging on to the playbook, like they want the playbook of what to do, and just making sure they know that there's some leeway here, right?
Yeah.
There's some, and and just finding how they can kind of keep inching more towards that, and I think eventually it just becomes a good self-fulfilling prophecy, where the more you do it, you see more good things happen with you at work and in
Yeah.
relationships. You feel more connected to people. I've done this, more, less, I mean, it's authentic, but it's also just being more vulnerable about mental health. And that's a big thing to get over, a barrier of feeling comfortable. But then I feel more connected in conversations with people where they open up and they share
Mhm.
about certain things. And we try to keep it, balanced with the professional setting. But um, that's not something I just all of a sudden was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go do
Right.
that. Like that took a lot of years, a lot of soul searching to get to that point. So and this is, I alluded to this question earlier, what's the hardest thing about being, I'll say, SVP slash exec, that you would, I don't know if caution's the right word, but you would make sure aspiring fraud fighters know about, if they're like, man, it must be just, sunshine and rainbows being in Karen's shoes? What are some things to um, be aware of?
Yeah, we'll say prepare instead of caution, but
Yeah.
maybe it's the same. Basically, be prepared, be open-minded, one. But you have to be from, as you're growing. You always stay open-minded. Um, but also be prepared to, first of all, always have data. Easier said than done. But be prepared to make your point and understand your sphere of influence. That was a big thing that I was reading about, but then I also just recently had a leadership retreat, I guess, if you will. But that's one of the things that we've talked about is understanding that your personal brand can be reached outside of your silo. And so it might not just be like my boss or my boss's boss that I need to worry about and or impress, but understand who in the organization you need to be allies with. Again, it sounds more of like preparing for like war, I guess, but I don't mean it like that. I say that because the great General Casey actually spoke to us, and so he's been through a lot. Then, but so that was the angle of it. But nonetheless, there will be people that have a viewpoint that's different from you. Understand who those people are, why they have that viewpoint, and then work to convince them of yours. And again, easier said than done, but that is kind of where at the, again, to your point, whatever organization is, it might be SVP, might be director, senior director, EVP, VP, whatever. But once you're getting kind of up there, it's beyond just like you and your direct reporting channel, and influencing others around you, and influencing the ways I'm saying it. And we told about it or talked about it a little bit before. It sounds kind of with like a negative connotation, like, oh, it's devious, but it's not. It's literally just creating allies, and creating I'll dare say, friendships, where if something happens and you absolutely need something to go your way, if you will, um, you don't want to be knocking on the person's door that you should have talked to 6 months ago
Before,
when you
yeah.
need them the most. I guess that was a very long-winded way of saying
No,
that, but
it's it gets more complicated at the top. And in
right,
that, you're not, like, you're an analyst, you have your KPIs that you need to hit. And I worked in card fraud, more on the card fraud side on the merchant, and it was like chargeback rate, keep under this rate, false positives, productivity, tick tick tick. You helped your teammate, you were a good teammate, and here's your review, right? So as you manage people and then manage big, larger initiatives, strategic initiatives, you're kind of pushing forward different ideas that are really important to the trajectory of the
yeah,
department and the company. There's going to be all kinds of opinions and relationships of folks that agree and disagree. And it gets, I imagine, a little muddied sometimes. And and how to, it in whatever way works best for you, build those relationships, make your points clear with data, and navigate that. And that's some of that you got to learn by fire, I imagine. And you probably make mistakes and you're like, "Ooh, that was not the right way to approach that." So that's why there are things like leadership, seminars and things that people can teach you. I would imagine these things you learned from other people, mentors, people who have done some of this stuff for a while and have maybe stepped in some shit that they didn't want to step in. Again, I don't know if I
Yeah.
should be cursing on this, but whatever.
Your older sibling paved the path and you know what you can and can't
Yeah.
do, right? Depending where you
Yeah.
fall in line, well, you could also maybe get away with everything. That's not me, but I'm just thinking of
No, and
analogy.
it's not to deter people from that. I think what at least from my own personal experience, and I imagine others go through the same thing, is if you're a hard charger and trying to be a high achiever, the way you see that is these senior level roles, right? With
Yeah.
the perks, the financial perks, the other perks, and then just remembering there's other sides to it, and the work changes and the expectations change, and when things go bad, who is responsible for that changes, right? So just keeping those things in mind, learning from people like yourselves and others along the way to best equip yourself for battle. And we all have our hard, and executives and senior folks are no different. Even if they're at higher pay scales, higher this, higher that, right? What does Karen Boyer, I will say, what do you do when you're not in the office, when you're not on stage, when you're not
Oh, jeez.
doing
Usually
that?
martini time by then, but uh,
Martinis count.
yep. The
That
end.
counts.
No, I'm kind of a geek, so yeah, I read about neuroscience and psychology, and and whereas even my sister says why don't you ever read a book for fun? And I'm like, I don't know, I feel like it's a waste of time. Like I could use that time to actually learn something, and I there's I'm not making myself like look like I'm great or anything. I'm just a nerd, I guess. But I play sports. I play softball.
Yeah.
Um, well, I'm on a
Like
league.
in a league, like a
Yeah,
softball league.
it's a co-ed league. God, I've been playing for over 20 years now.
20 years, you must be MVP by this point.
You'd think so, but I get in my head sometimes. No, but it's funny now where we have pretty much the same team for the past 10 years, and all
Yeah.
the teams that are coming up are significantly younger. And so
Yeah.
it's and I still feel that way, but we still hold our own. But that's the thing. I'm just waiting for my nephew and his friends to grow just a couple more years, and then they could start
Yeah,
replacing.
bringing some young ringers, and
Yes,
it's
that's
usually
it.
more of like a social fun thing, anyways. So
Yeah, it is, and it's good to stay active and everything else.
yeah,
But I am a mother, and so my son, gosh, now does soccer, flag football, baseball. We stopped at hockey because I hate being cold, and I'm like, I can't do that. I'm sorry. Just very active in that life now. And I also started painting by numbers. I sound like such a dork, PJ, but
It's,
I don't have any. I don't mountain climb. I
uh, I've
ride
learned that
my
being
bike.
a dork is the new cool. That's
Is
as you
that
get
it?
old,
Oh,
as you get older, right? Like if you were doing
yeah.
in high school, maybe you wouldn't be getting raging at all the parties if you were doing painting by numbers. But although I don't think kids rage at parties anymore. I don't. I think it's a different generation. But I
Yeah,
digress.
I agree. Social media.
So
Yeah.
yeah, well, that's a
That's a
whole
whole
nother
nother
can.
conversation.
You stay active. You do things that kind of refill your tank, whether
Yep.
socially or emotionally, and we need that, right? That's I asked that just because I was curious, but also if you take a week of stress and then don't find some way to have an outlet to have kind of refill your
Release.
soul,
Yeah.
then that next week and the next month, it's just you got to have that, whatever
Right.
that looks like, and
I
paint by
also
numbers.
don't need to
There's
brag, but I started treadmilling. I've done it twice in the past 10 days. So really
Now,
creating a habit.
is that the act of running on a treadmill?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I never used it as a treadmilling, like a verb, if that's a verb. Yeah.
Oh, I,
So, running, you
I looked
run
at
on
it
a
for a
treadmill.
long time, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You run on a treadmill. So that's good. I haven't done that in quite some
No, I
time.
mean,
So
it was just what you were talking about, well, what do you do to release? And I did it recently, and like, it was something that I was just kind of like, and I told myself I'd do like a mile or 10 minutes, whatever one comes last, actually. It was interesting. It was definitely like therapeutic. And like, I kind of walked off of it, and like, it was weird how all the thoughts just kind of like came out through my feet.
some people run and it's their go-to, man. Like they
Yeah.
can't, it like if they miss a day of
I
running,
want to be that type of person, but
yeah. Well,
one day.
see how treadmilling goes first. And then like a 5K, you can sign up for a 5K, 10K. You'll be running a marathon before you know it.
Yeah, I'll do a 0.5K. I'll start there.
0.5K. There you
Yeah.
go. Cool. So the last question, it's been great talking with you, Karen, but the last question is something I ask everybody. We kind of intentionally named this Fight Back. I feel like every part of our branding is fraud fight, fight club, fight back, fight, fight, fight. But the idea is it's hard to fight back because this job's hard. And your job's hard. The wins are rarely celebrated. You're always kind of being thrown under the bus for too much fraud or regulation issues. So what keeps you fighting back?
Oh, yeah. Well, this is actually an easy question. And I think you've asked me this before, so you know the answer. But because I know that what we're doing is helping people. And
Yeah.
every transaction that's stopped, every payment or login that's stopped, money movement, you get it, but nonetheless is helping somebody at some point, whether it's the recipient, whether it's the person being scammed, whether, it's both. It's not just about widgets, it's not just about metrics, it's not just about data. It's about everything that we're touching that's fraud that we're stopping is literally making the world a better place.
Yeah. I mean, in one form or the other, the most common answer boils down to because it's helping people.
Yep.
And I think that's what's unique about an industry and a community of fraud fighters, however you're helping, is that you're connected to that purpose, right? And you don't get into it for the money, especially the earlier stage jobs. So there's some kind of purpose either you get into it for, you find along the way. For me, it was less connected during like credit card fraud, where like they get their money back, they issue the charge back. A lot of times they're just lying and trying to commit friendly fraud.
Yep.
So I'm like, I'm not connected to this purpose as much. But then when you get into more of the human crime type elements of scams and mules and psychological and emotional trauma and that stuff, just even as bad as that, people opening up accounts in your names or synthetic identities, and your credit is shot. Like all that stuff is really taxing on folks, right? And so from that to the worst of the worst, it feels good to be given back, right? We spent 45
That's
minutes
it.
chatting and time before then me trying to troubleshoot technology and such, but always good to chat with you, Karen.
Likewise, PJ. Thank you.